Good evening, everyone. My name is Naomi Hausman. I'm the Director of Institutional Advancement at Gratz College. It is my pleasure and honor to welcome all of you tonight. I will like to welcome Flower Darby as this year's featured presenter for the Deena M. Grossmann Memorial Lecture in Education. This memorial lecture was established by the Grossmann family to honor the memory of their late daughter, Deena. Deena was the very first graduate of Gratz's Master of Arts in Jewish Education program. She had a distinguished career as a Jewish educator, serving as an educational director in Maine and Texas. Tragically, in 1993, she died from an incurable form of cancer. In her life, Deena was a dugma, Hebrew for one who serves as a role model, who leads and sets a high standard as an example for others. Deena had an inner spark that propelled her and those around her. Through the annual Deena M. Grossmann Memorial Lecture in Education, her family hopes to keep her memory alive so that others may benefit from and be inspired by her legacy. The Grossmann family's connection to Gratz College spans two generations. Deena's parents, Miriam, has joined us this evening online, and the late Saul Grossman, are both alum who met one another at Gratz. Miriam completed a Master in Jewish Studies in 1988 and a Bachelor of Hebrew Literature in 1951, which laid the foundation for her career as a Hebrew school teacher. Saul concluded his successful lifelong career as a Philadelphia educator by teaching one of Gratz's very first online courses, so very apropos for tonight's talk. So on behalf of Gratz College, I would like to thank Miriam Grossman, who is again here with us tonight, and her family for establishing this wonderful lecture in loving tribute to their extraordinary daughter, Deena. It is now my pleasure to introduce my colleague, Dr. Donna Guerin, who will be leading tonight's program and formally introducing our presenter. Dr. Guerin is Gratz's Director of Libraries and Learning Resources at Gratz College and also serves as the Director of the Doctor in Educational Leadership program. She's also an alumnus, so we all are very Gratz proud of Dr. Guerin. Donna, thank you so much, and I look forward to this wonderful program.
Thank you, Naomi. Welcome, everyone. The Gratz faculty and leadership are dedicated to providing our faculty with regular professional development sessions such as this, and our students with a dynamic and thoughtful learning environment. Our online learning philosophy includes, in part, that Gratz College is committed to creating rigorous and engaging online learning environments where all participants are encouraged to strive for excellence. Tonight, Gratz College is very excited to welcome a wonderful person who is known for her excellence in the online teaching and learning world. Flower Darby celebrates and promotes effective teaching in all modalities to advance equitable learning outcomes for all students. She is an associate director of the Teaching for Learning Center at the University of Missouri. Prior to that, she held roles such as Assistant Dean of Online and Innovative Pedagogies and Director of Teaching for Student Success. These roles have allowed her to build on her experience teaching in person and online for over 30 years in a range of subjects, including psychology, English, technology, education leadership, dance, and Pilates. In her current work and multiple publications, Flower empowers faculty to teach inclusive and equity-focused classes in all modalities. She is the lead author, along with James M. Lang, of Small Teaching Online, Applying Learning Science in Online Classes, and a co-author of the Norton Guide to Equity-Minded Teaching. Her latest book, coming in spring of 2026, is The Joyful Online Teacher, Finding Fizz in Asynchronous Online Classes. Before I turn over to Flower, I want to mention that we're going to leave time at the end of this session for Q&A, but also please add questions or comments to the chat so we can address them in real time. And with that, I'll turn it over to Flower Darby.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that warm welcome. And it is my distinct honor and privilege to be here with you tonight. And for those of you who may be watching the recording later, I value your time investment as well. So thank you to everyone who is taking that time to invest in yourselves and your students for the benefit of meaningful and authentic teaching and learning experiences. In an AI age, things have changed over the last few years, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. Let me go ahead and bring up some slides. And as was already mentioned, we will, oops, I thought I had that on play. Let's play that. We will have dedicated time at the end for questions and answers because I really feel that this is a complex conversation that we are engaged in right now. The AI tools are rapidly changing. We are all, as professionals, as lifelong learners, we are all trying to figure out what are appropriate ways to use these tools. How do I make sure to prioritize my own intellectual independence and help my students foster their cognitive muscle building as well, so to speak. So I've built in time at the end, but about partway through, we're going to pause and check in and see if anybody has questions or topics for further conversation. And then, as Dr. Guerin already mentioned, please feel free to add comments and such to the chat as well. Because I believe that if you're here tonight, you care deeply about these topics, and you may be doing, in fact, I'm sure that some of you are doing some really great things with AI. So I encourage you to take advantage of the chat if that is useful to you. I would like to begin by just articulating my gratitude once again for the Gratz College organizing team, for the Grossmann family, for really modeling this investment and honoring of their daughter. It is meaningful to me, and I appreciate your investment here. And again, for everybody who's here live or watching the recording later, I don't take for granted that you're choosing to spend this time in this conversation. So thank you for being here as well. One of my key takeaways for tonight is going to be that we have to prioritize human connections, relationships, our shared humanity, our experiences as embodied human beings navigating a complex world. And we really need to prioritize that more than ever in online classes. And so I usually have a slide that is something like this, and I'm really doubling down on this point. I don't always spend all of my time in this little Zoom box. When I'm not working or learning or teaching, I do have a life. I have a wonderful husband named Tim. He is a strong partner and thought, collaborator in my work, having supported faculty in online teaching for many years. He's also an online adjunct instructor himself. So he understands, and we think through these things a lot together. We have three phenomenal kids. They are 17, 19, and 21, and we learn a lot from their experiences as well as students, as people in this dynamic democracy and in this interesting age. So I always think it's important to help you see a little bit about who I am when I'm not working, because that fosters connections as well. Maybe you have a wonderful partner who is a thought, collaborator. Maybe you have young adult kids, or you remember those times. These pictures are from London, by the way, from a recent trip, somewhere that we enjoy going as a family. But even if, this doesn't feel comfortable to you, maybe you don't want to share this kind of level of detail about yourself with your online students, I really strongly encourage you to help your students see who you are as a real person. It may not look like pictures of your family's faces on a screen or on a slide, but tell stories, make jokes if that's how you are in the world, send memes or use emojis, or just help your students see a little bit more about who you are, because that is going to foster their enjoyment, their engagement, and their motivation to do their work of learning for themselves and to do that work meaningfully and with integrity. So we're going to go ahead and jump in. And I will share, as was already mentioned, that I do have a new book coming out. And this talk is not an advertisement for the talk, or for the book, I should say. But the research and the scholarship and the theory that I have curated into this new offering is, of course, shaping my thinking, especially as we're navigating this AI age. And we're really thinking deeply about the importance of those human connections and what do we do in online classes in particular, where, as we know, it can be easy for students to choose to evade the work of learning. So a lot of my thinking is going to be influencing what we're talking about here tonight. And for tonight, I've provided just a brief introduction to set the stage. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the importance of human connections in asynchronous classes in particular. I'm going to check in after that and see if we have, some thoughts, some comments to share, some questions that have been raised. Then we're going to look at strategic applications of AI specifically tailored for the Gratz College context, for a fully online school with a heavy focus on graduate programs, some very specialized programs, some very well-known scholars who are among your faculty, some your students who are also, very many of them are teachers and educators, and we're all grappling with this together. So I've kind of tailored this part of the talk for your particular context. And again, I really feel like more conversation is helpful at this moment. In fact, I listened to a wonderful podcast today where it was just about we have to be figuring this out together. So I've left a little bit of extra time for questions and conversation. I can expand on anything that we talk about, or if there's something I'm not mentioning, do feel free to raise that as well. But let's go ahead and dive in, and I'm going to invite you to use the chat box here for well, hold on. Okay, so I misunderstood. I think that people can't see each other's chats. I think of that is what I'm now understanding. But still, I was going to ask you to put it in the chat, and you could if you want to.
I can actually update it, Flower, so I can change the setting where everyone can see the chat.
Super. I think that's fine. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Donna. I appreciate
Sure.
that. The reason is because as I already alluded to, I do think we can learn from each other using that space. And in this moment, if you would like to share one word about how you feel regarding teaching online today in an AI age or in this moment, if you're here live, if you would like to put a word in the chatbot, it's a phrase we use a lot these days, in the chat box, I would love to hear from you. How are you feeling about teaching and learning online in an AI age? I'll give that just a moment to see if folks want to respond.
Seeing one answer here in the Q&A. Seeing it in the
Oh,
Q&A. It says the chat's disabled, so I apologize for that, but I can see the Q&A. So please feel free to add into the Q&A. I can read those out. Someone is saying, so actually, so someone said they're feeling excited, all in caps.
I
Um,
pulled that up as well, Donna. Thank
okay,
you so
great.
much. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, and what we know about teaching or presenting with technology is sometimes things are a little bit different than we expect. That's normal. So I did see a couple of comments that chat wasn't showing up. That's okay. I appreciate the effort to adjust that in the moment. But what we are seeing in the Q&A pod is that we are seeing challenging, we're seeing restricted, excited, unsure, exciting, and challenging. Cautious, absolutely. Mixed feelings. I think that's a really important response. A little bit disconnected, absolutely. In fact, we might even say a lot disconnected. Great. I love that. Unsteady. That's a wonderful word. And, very early in the chat, a comment came in about just feeling like we're struggling to see what's happening. And I think that's important to recognize all these different kinds of responses because yeah, and we see a comment here that lots of genuine fears are being expressed on LinkedIn. And what my recent scholarship has led me to conclude without a doubt is that the way we feel about anything significantly impacts our motivation to dive into that thing and even our ability to think deeply about that topic, that task, that undertaking. So if you're in the category of feeling excited today, then maybe you're here with all kinds of things that are working well for you in your online classes. But if you're here today and maybe you're feeling discouraged or you're just still trying to wrap your head around the situation that we find ourselves in, what actually happens in our minds is that there is a natural dismotivation or a disinclination, a lack of energy to dive in. And so, with that in mind, I want to share just briefly a theoretical framework that is out of positive psychology. We're not going to dwell on this, but it helps to inform the direction that we're going to go today. And it's the foundational framework for the new book. It's the PERMA model of well-being. There are 5 building blocks of subjective well-being. And the research indicates that this model helps us to enhance our own, basically our happiness, our well-being, our experiencing of a good life. And you can build on any of these kind of building blocks that resonate with you specifically. So I'm going to go ahead and just acknowledge as well that when I'm presenting to you, I just want to be explicit about this. I do keep my eyes right here on the webcam, and I try not to pay attention to other things that are going on. So on that note, Donna and host team, If there comes up anything that you would like to address or have me address in the moment, please feel free to unmute. I've become pretty good at watching for the unmuting on Zoom as,
You
right.
got it.
Perfect. Okay, so this PERMA theory enhances, or it sort of indicates 5 areas of our lives that we can cultivate that general sense of well-being. And I'm not going to dwell on this, but positive emotion is the first one. It's all about, honestly, if we're feeling happy, if we're feeling hopeful, if we're feeling proud and grateful, and if we're enjoying ourselves, we're going to feel better, right? We're going to feel more well-being. But this model recognizes that not everybody is hardwired in that kind of feel-good mindset. Some folks see the glass as half empty. And so therefore, positive emotional experiences are not the only way to enhance well-being. Engagement refers to that state of flow when we are so absorbed in the task at hand, using our full creative and intellectual energy that we lose all sense of time and self. That experience enhances our well-being. Relationships, feeling supported by other people, connected with other people, ranging from a quick interaction at the with the barista at the coffee shop to a really deep, meaningful family or friend, a loved one who you connect with from time to time. Every form of social connection and relationship enhances our well-being. Meaning in PERMA, the M is about feeling connected to and in service of a higher purpose. And I honestly believe in every educational institution, this is absolutely what we are about. We are helping our students to form their identities, to engage in a transformational learning journey. And then I think in an institution like Gratz, there's even more that might be informing your approaches in some of the really amazing and specialized programs that you offer. And then A is all about accomplishment, achievement, success, winning, finishing, crossing the finish line. Accomplishment helps us to recognize that that sparks a little bit of a well-being experience as well. And so with these two in mind, you can see that I've highlighted positive emotions and relationships. That's the big focus that I've been taking in my online teaching work, is how do we help ourselves and our students enjoy our online classes, and how do we really foster rapport, relationships, sense of belonging, helping students feel connected to the learning community that they're in. All of these building blocks of well-being are important and actually enhance optimal functioning in every life domain based on the empirical body of literature. But for asynchronous online specifically, I think positive emotions and relationships have the most to offer us. So in the book, and this is the end of the book commercial, I promise, the way this goes is that when we're enjoying ourselves, it actually predicts academic achievement. It predicts motivation. It helps students select from deep and flexible learning strategies. It helps us to think more clearly. It helps to open our minds to new ideas, diverse perspectives. Basically, everything goes better if we're enjoying ourselves. So does that happen for relational teaching as well, that when we are being interactive with our students, that everybody is thriving more, we are learning better, we are learning from each other. Students are not feeling unattended to, which is pretty common in asynchronous classes in general. We are feeling like we are recharging our online teaching battery as well. Relational, rapport-filled online teaching makes a big difference in our mutual collective thriving, and equally importantly, perhaps more importantly in this context, in our students' learning and success. And I'm very explicit in this book that we're not going to let AI steal our joy. So the new book is not about teaching online with AI. It's about teaching online in meaningful ways that foster humanity, human connections, growth, transformation, while also, again, recharging our own online teaching battery in really challenging times that we find ourselves in. So let's think briefly about how we can teach online in an AI age specifically. And I have some thoughts to share. And then when we get to the end of this section, I will pause and check in to see if you have any questions or comments. Again, feel free to put comments or thoughts in the question and answer pod, and we can sort of check in on those as well. And then after we finish this section, check in with each other. There will be another section about kind of specifically for your context, what might be particularly useful. So right now, teaching online in an AI age, well, my sense My question earlier today was about online teaching in general, but my sense when I interact with faculty members is that we have very mixed feelings about teaching and learning with AI. Sometimes we feel optimistic, sometimes we feel cautiously optimistic, sometimes we feel frustrated, and we really do wonder if we ourselves or if our students are losing their cognitive muscle. And so I don't know about you, but I tend to move around this map on any given day. There are days that I do feel more optimistic and days that I do feel more discouraged. And because we have this variety of experiences, I want to be clear that today I'm offering us a journey, not a solution. When we finish this time together, I don't think we're going to have all the answers about what to do with AI in online classes, but we know that we're here to support each other. I know that you have a strong community at Gratz, and again, the commitment of offering effective professional development opportunities and conversations among colleagues. And so today we're just going to be taking a few steps down this road as we think about what do we do about AI and the threat it can pose in asynchronous online classes. Well, I've already tipped my hand. My first few recommendations are about really prioritizing human connections. I have been teaching online for almost 20 years at this point, and it still surprises me at how easy it is for me when I'm the instructor to sort of drift away from my online students. And the research is very clear. The number one complaint of students in asynchronous online classes is that they feel like their instructor isn't really there. They're having to walk themselves through. But the flip side is also true. The research is equally clear that online students tend to drift away. It's easy for all of us to get caught up in the busyness of life and just not really invest in this environment in the same way, for example, when we teach in person, there's a set day and time. It's easy to go to class. We interact with our students. But I know that I have been guilty in the past of not always honoring my students and their time, not being quite as responsive as our students need. So we're going to think a little bit more about how we can prioritize those connections and how we can build rapport and relationships. Now, I know that there at Gratz, you use Canvas. I know your classes are 8 weeks, generally speaking. I know you're all committed and caring and dedicated educators. You are doing this because it is meaningful, right? Back to that M in PERMA. But what we know is that just helping your students, as I already mentioned, see yourself as a person, whether that's an introduction video that you have, whether you make sure to have some kind of a photo, whether it's a headshot or maybe something of you engaged in a hobby or even just a representative landscape, somewhere that you enjoy and find peace and well-being when you're in that space. Again, helping students identify a little bit more with you and then fostering their ability to share a little bit more about who they are and what's important to them, what their goals are, why they're choosing to take this next step in their educational journey, what is important, what matters to them. These kinds of conversations, when facilitated in online discussions, for example, asynchronous discussions, really helps to foster that sense of community, that sense of belonging. Again, one of the number one problems for students in online classes that they tell us about is they feel isolated. They feel lonely. It's hard to feel connected with other people in what is, quite frankly, a text-heavy environment. So being more interactive while still providing and protecting your own time. You don't want to be in there like a 24/7 chatbot, but strategically and within reason, interacting more with your students, helping your students interact more with each other, it really is going to go a long way to help foster that well-being. And again, I didn't really go into detail on this, but again, the literature is clear that more well-being equals better cognition, better memory, more motivation, more engagement, more retention of new information, more application of that. So there are definite academic returns on the investment of centering human connections in any class, but I would say especially in asynchronous online classes. And then the other thing that I focus on in recent work is to think about eliciting positive emotions in our classes. And this may not be something that as academics we may not have thought about before, Oftentimes in higher education, we tend to think that the pursuit of knowledge is cold and rational, and there's no room for emotions here. But the recent neuroscience shows that's actually not true. Emotions and cognition are inextricably linked. And there is, again, an abundant body of research on achievement emotions. This began in educational settings. It has now been expanded to any social situation where achievement is rewarded, for example, the workplace, thinking about promotions, or even, for example, sports or individual competition, athletic competitions like gymnastics. Achievement emotions have been shown to clearly predict and enhance successful outcomes. And the number one achievement emotion that has this effect, based on the work of Reinhard Peckgren, who is the leading researcher, the leading global researcher on this topic, the number one emotion that predicts all that success, all that learning, all that achievement is enjoyment. Enjoyment predicts success. And if you think about it, it makes sense, right? If we're enjoying what we're doing, if we're really engaged, if we're having fun, if we're really captivate. I'm so captivated, I'm losing my words. If we're really focused on what it is that we're learning, if we're finding it satisfying, rewarding, fulfilling, we are intrinsically, naturally deeper engaged. It just happens naturally. We don't have to dredge up this work. So when I think about eliciting positive emotions, it's about things like, it is about things like having fun, if you ask me, when we can ask interesting discussion questions, or pose a scenario about maybe something. You could even bring a little bit of funniness into it. I'm thinking about an example from statistics where students are asked to complete an activity called bungee jumping Barbie, and they have to complete a series of linear regressions to determine exactly how much bungee cord Barbie needs before she goes splat on the rocks. It is the explicit content, but it's also funny. So anything that we can do like that in our classes can actually foster that learning, that retention of new information. But in an academic context, sometimes it's easier to think about what we call knowledge, emotions, and experiences. And curiosity and interest represent those two things. So, how can we spark students' curiosity? How can we create assignments or discussion board questions or interactions between students that are inherently interesting? And when we can do that, it's going to actually foster increased motivation, which satisfying that motivation is in itself enjoyable. There is a degree of satisfaction that we experience, and that boosts the well-being also. So, as I thought about our time together here today, one of the questions is, well, what can we as educators do using AI to facilitate these kinds of experiences? How can we perhaps put AI to work for us as educators? What might we do to streamline our work? And one example that comes to mind is to use AI, generative AI, such as ChatGPT or Claude, those kinds of tools, to generate those kinds of scenarios that we were just talking about, or to customize instructions or topics based on students' own interests. And something that I've really been thinking deeply about in my work is to frame our teaching and learning experiences in terms of this question that we could ask of our students. And that is, what matters to you? What's important to you? What's driving your participation in this program? What is important when you think about your life goals or the issues that our community is facing? Or, what matters to you? And then how can we take that inherent motivation and put it to work in our online classes? So maybe AI tools could help us tailor our activities and assignments in that regard. And then the other way to think about emotions in academic spaces is to try to minimize the negative experiences, because everything that I've been talking about in terms of enjoyment and positive experiences, facilitating academic success, it's kind of the opposite when it comes to negative emotions. But I have to qualify that because it's not quite as clear cut. Broadly speaking, if we feel bad about something, if we are frustrated with a grade or some feedback that we received on our most recent draft of our thesis, for example, that can be very, very demotivating. And likewise, if an online student in our classes is feeling isolated, is feeling a little bit unsupported, that can be demotivating, and it's easier then for students to drift away. Now, I would qualify it and say that sometimes we feel frustrated about, for example, feedback that we got, and it increases our motivation to work harder to overcome or address that feedback. So sometimes negative emotional experiences are kind of nuanced. But when I think specifically about online classes and what happens here, I would encourage us to think specifically about how we can reduce anxiety, how we can reduce those perceptions of isolation or loneliness, how we can reduce fear in our online classes. And I will share now in the next section of the talk. I'm gonna share a little bit about my own experience, because I'm actually an online student in a fully online asynchronous PhD program in psychology. Everything that I've been talking about right now has been based on my doctoral studies related to cognition, motivation, emotion. How do we learn? How do we help our students learn more effectively? But the fact is, I'm wearing the same hat as our online students are, right? I'm walking a mile in their shoes. And in the next part of the talk, I'll give a little bit more information about this. But I have felt anxiety. I have felt some fear about whether I used AI in an appropriate way or not as a student. So again, in that next section, we're going to be very specific about how we can help students. I'll just share some stories from my own example, what has been helpful for me, where I have had to check my own internal moral compass. But anything that we can do to help students understand what to expect, help them feel supported, help to minimize any fear or frustration. These are going to be things that we can do to help their ability to be successful in online classes as well. So I'm going to check in here and ask, so far of the things that we've been talking about, what has caught your interest? And as you're thinking about that, again, it seems like the Q&A pod is the best place to put those answers. I have that pulled up in front of me now, so we can kind of talk through that. Or if you have a question, want me to expand on anything, what has been most interesting? What's on your mind right now? I'll just pause and see if you'd like to share anything there.
Flower, I can't add something to the chat or the Q&A because I'm a host, but I'm absolutely like enthralled by this question of what matters to you. I think that is extremely powerful, especially thinking about our graduate students and the programs that they're enrolled in at Gratz. Obviously, they're coming to Gratz with a lot of passion about the field that they're going into. But I'm thinking about like how that could also tie in with AI. Um, what matters to you in terms of using AI to support your academic journey, right? So like
Mm,
maybe summarizing articles isn't your strong point. So you can use AI for that because it doesn't matter to you. But really
right.
what does matter to you is knowledge accumulation, or you mentioned the humanization of interacting with your fellow students or faculty. So I'm just wondering if you could talk more about that. Like what matters to you? I thought was really striking.
Yeah, it's really captured my interest as well. And maybe something will come forward out of that. But yeah, Donna, I think you hit the nail on the head. Here's an example. Well, I want to comment on one other thing that you said, first of all. You mentioned that maybe using AI for a particular task may not be your strong suit. And that is a direct preview of one of my upcoming slides, because I'm going to talk about how we can each cultivate our own expertise. And we do have strengths and weaknesses. And there are things that I will use AI for, and there are other things that it's easier to do myself, right? It doesn't take me as long. So that's an important aspect here. But to your question about what matters to you, what's important to me as a scholar, as a professional, as a person, right? This is an example. In my workplace, I will use AI to draft recommendation letters. Don't judge. I will. I will also read through them and make sure that, refine them, edit them, make sure it's something that I'm proud to put my name on. I will use AI to draft policy updates or other kind of workplace writing. In fact, I've even used AI to help me draft the written material for a recent faculty course on effective and equity-minded online teaching. I've drafted some of the mini lectures with AI. But here's the counterexample. With the new book that came out or is coming out, it's so close. I never used AI. because it mattered to me. It mattered to me to get my voice into every single word, into every page in that book, to my experience, the curation of research that I pulled together. So that for me, that has been something interesting. If I care about what I'm working on, I'm less inclined to use AI to answer your question. And I think we can pose that to our students, like, what matters to you? Where is your integrity in this? You don't choose to engage in a one boy words in a graduate program, as you mentioned, with the kind of passions that people are bringing, just to then outsource your learning. So I think it's a good idea to message that for students as well.
Yes. Thank you.
And then,
There's
sorry.
there's about 3 or 4 questions here in the Q&A. Do you want to
Yeah.
take a look? Do you want me
Yeah,
to read them?
absolutely.
Okay,
Thank
go
you.
ahead. Yeah.
I saw a couple of those coming in. Let me talk through those, and then we'll kind of get back to the slides here as we can. So we have a comment here about using talking. Again, I think that a lot of these are going to preview upcoming slides, which means that the rest of the slides could go quickly, because this first one is a preview, sharing with MGT 512 students about how you use AI in grant writing, how it can be a tool ranging from Grammarly to ChatGPT, how to use it as a super Google. That kind of transparency and that modeling of effective use is exactly what I think we should be doing. Right now, it's kind of an uncertain time. People are not sure. Like, for example, when I first used AI to help write some online class materials, I was like, "Ooh, how do I feel about that?" I came to terms with it after I wrestled with myself. That's what I think we need to do. And then I made sure that that information was in the course. So that kind of transparency, helping students think about how to use AI appropriately, is absolutely very helpful. Thank you so much. Another person wrote that the positive nature of human connections in the online learning environment, how this can integrate with helping students use AI ethically. Well, just briefly, it's very clear, speaking of this mattering, what matters to you, what do you care about? It's very clear that if your students care about you as a person, not just a dispenser of knowledge, and if your students feel that you care about them, or we care about them as people first and learners second, they will be less tempted to cheat, to be very blunt about it. There are psychological factors that influence cheating decisions, or decisions to do the right thing and do the work of learning with meaning and integrity. And that human aspect, that feeling connected, feeling cared for, if I care about you as my instructor, I will be less tempted to outsource or kind of offload some of that cognitive work. We have another comment coming in from St. Louis. I love it. Accuracy is paramount. So I have to, yes, exactly. I have to vet for everything that an AI emits very carefully, but I use it for brainstorming study guides and lesson plans all of the time. And I'm guessing that you are a teacher. I understood that many of Gratz students are teachers as well. But let me just highlight and emphasize that point about analyzing everything carefully. I'm going to talk in a few minutes about being AI whisperers. And I think one of our key skills that we need to develop as professionals and help our students develop is to analyze everything. As I mentioned a minute ago, I'll draft recommendation letters, but I don't want to put my name on that if I don't like the way it sounds or if it's not accurate, right? We all need to take responsibility. We've seen plenty of stories in the news about very embarrassing situations where professionals published information that had false citations, for example. So really great point there on that one about checking the accuracy as well, and then using it to lighten your own teaching load as well. Okay, so here's one coming in about assessment and class activities in the age of AI, expressing some concern. I teach an in-person college level intro to social sciences to students of applied sciences and engineering. Yeah, I will acknowledge that I have not really touched on the concerns. I mean, I've been kind of hinting around a little bit about it. We should be concerned. We absolutely should be. And this is why I had that slide earlier that says we're not going to get all the answers, because it is possible for students and employees and bad actors to use AI in illicit ways, in nefarious ways. We know that students, broadly speaking, some are giving into that temptation to sort of outsource their own learning. We should be concerned. I personally think that conversations like this, and maybe there's a book discussion group that wants to get started. Maybe there's a, kind of an ongoing conversation about what do we do. And by the way, there are great books out there already about teaching with AI and mitigating some of these challenges. I don't think we can prevent students who choose not to do the work of learning, but how can we discuss those concerns, stay engaged as contributors to this conversation, and talk with our students about doing the work of learning for themselves. So I think we've addressed the questions that have come in so far. Let's return to sort of the next section. And I think this will go quickly, so we should have still a few more minutes at the end as well. So be getting your questions ready and feel free to type them in before it's time. That way they're primed as well. So how do we promote authentic learning to the concern that we were just discussing a minute ago? Well, I believe that we do have an opportunity to develop two key competencies. And I really mean this for ourselves, for our students, and honestly, for everybody. I'm thinking about my aging parents who I recently learned were victims of fraud. I'm thinking about my young children, they're not young anymore, my young adult kids who are, facing an interesting future in terms of their employment. I think there are two things that we all need to develop. First of all, and this is to the point that we were just talking about, to critically analyze everything, whether you're asking AI for material and then you're going to put it out there with your name on it, or whether you get a text or an email or see something in social media. We have to develop the habit of stopping and thinking and analyzing what that is so that we are not led astray by bad actors. Critically important in this really polarized time that we find ourselves in. And I believe that we have this opportunity to become and help our students become AI whisperers. So I use that phrase. You're familiar with the horse whisperer concept, probably. It's about being able to tame an unruly beast, to, in this particular context, to use AI skillfully and well. And to Donna's point earlier, there are some activities and tasks that we are already good at, and AI is not useful for us. But there are lots of other things on an individual basis that AI can really help with. And that's what I'm definitely finding, is it's highly individualized. So maybe brainstorming with AI isn't useful for me, but maybe checking my grammar is going to be useful after I get a draft written. That's going to vary by individuals, and this is what I think we can invite our students to develop: is how does AI useful for me in different contexts, in the workplace, in my student role, in my community? What are the competencies that I can develop? So, a few examples. Just in case you haven't seen this kind of framework before, it can be helpful. I didn't make this up, and there are plenty of versions out there on the internet, but the red light, and this might be useful even to add to your instructions, right? Even a graphic, for example, like, no, red light, we're not going to use AI for this part of this task, and here's why. Because we know that, especially in online classes, students could use AI. There's really nothing that's preventing them. So tell them, no, for this part, I want you to develop your own human competency, your own cognitive muscle. So this is a red light part of the assignment or task. Yellow light is, for me, it's about proceeding with caution. We can use AI in careful and sort of identified or prescribed ways. And then green light is about, you know what, I don't even know what you're going to do with AI, but it could be very exciting. It could be interesting. Go forth and innovate. So this is just a simple way to begin thinking about providing guidance to our students. But specifically, we've already talked a little bit about this. I really think it's important to coach students on appropriate use, and we've heard some good examples of that. And one way to think about doing this is to assign 2 steps. I like the simplicity of this. If we're here tonight and we haven't really dug into how to use AI in our classes, well, the simplest way to start, I'm all about small teaching, right? Little steps to help us get going. The simplest way to start is to ask students to do something with AI and then ask them to do something with that. To the point earlier about critically analyzing every single thing that AI produces, that could be an activity or an assignment or part of the grading scheme for a particular discussion forum. Get AI to, produce this summary or address this question, or create this scenario for you yourself as a student to engage with, and then analyze that, and then critique that. And then I've even seen instructors have students use AI to generate a reference list, a list of citations, and then go check every single citation and see if it's accurate, right? Anytime we're asking students to work with the output, it is critical thinking. They are developing their own literacy and ability to tell what AI is useful for them and what uses are not useful. And then if we want to take this a step further, the AI sandwich can be helpful. It's sort of 3 steps, right? Do something, get AI to do something with what you did, and then you have the final say, right? You work with that material, or vice versa. Ask AI to generate an outline, then you as the student write the essay, and then use AI to generate feedback or provide copy editing suggestions. It's sort of a building on that 2-step process to have students critically engage in these activities and think about where AI could be useful. And then in all of these things, it's really helpful to structure specific ways for students to analyze and address, to provide some clarity, some transparency, and some communication. And so I have just a few remaining points that I wanted to share with you. I thought it might be helpful to talk a little bit about my own experience as a PhD student in an online program right now. It took me a long time in my life's journey to figure out what program I wanted to do, and asynchronous certainly makes it possible for me, just like it does for Gratz students as well. So here's some examples of things that I have learned, things that have been helpful for me, times that I've had to wrestle, right? Because I don't want to get accused of using AI in inappropriate ways. I want to demonstrate integrity in my own work. And I'm a very, very busy professional and mom and wife. And so if there's an opportunity to streamline my work, right, we have to kind of wrestle with what's appropriate. I will go on record and say I really feel very integrous and very ethical and responsible about everything I've submitted as a student. But I've had to wrestle a few times. So again, we've already talked a little bit about this. Make sure that your instructions are clear. And here's the example I was thinking about. I will say my program has given very clear instructions, and it's helpful. I appreciate it. But there was one time when I was like, is it okay to get AI to generate the literature review for my dissertation? Not the review, an outline for the literature review. Or should I generate the outline first and then get AI's feedback? And I asked that question to a faculty mentor, and they were like, come on, Flower, you got to do the work first, and then AI can give you feedback. Don't take the easy way out. So really specific, explicit guidance. Here's exactly what I think you can do with AI appropriately, and here's what I'm asking you not to do. It helps. I'm a student. It helps. Okay. It's also very important to increase the transparency and the communication. And I would say in both directions. We've already talked about the usefulness of telling students, modeling, here's what I've been using AI for to help me write grant proposals. Here's, in my case, I used AI to help create some written materials for the online course. I told my students that. And then communication to that explicit guidance point that we made a moment ago, but also coming from the opposite direction. Ask students to disclose exactly where they used AI or how they used AI. And I did see this already in the Gratz policy on effective and integrous use of AI, where there is material on that website about asking students to disclose what and how AI was used. And you could add another element, asking students to reflect on whether that was helpful or whether it actually took more time than it was worth, or kind of prompt a little bit of metacognitive reflection to the end, to the purpose of helping students develop that skill with AI, that ability to be AI whisperers, using each tool to get the most out of it to support your productivity without sacrificing your intellect or your humanity along the way. Again, and I knew these slides would go quickly, modeling the appropriate use of AI, talking about it, even taking class time, or in an asynchronous context, recording a video that talks through. You could even do a little bit of a demonstration using ChatGPT or a different tool. What is appropriate? What am I asking you not to do? And specifically in a graduate program, I've had a couple of different ideas. Things that have benefited me is the appropriate use of AI-powered research tools. So if you're not already talking with your students about these things, this might be something to kind of dive in on, because what happens if we are not communicating with students, it does increase that anxiety, that confusion. Is this okay? So ways that I have used AI-powered research tools to support my literature review and my dissertation process. I rely pretty heavily on two tools in particular, Elicit and Google Notebook LM. Elicit AI is a way to use natural language queries to dive into the literature. It's empirical literature, no hallucinations. And it's a useful tool, but I always find that after reading the summary, and you can even chat with the papers and ask a few questions, there comes a time when I decide I need to go get that paper and read it and dig in and wrestle with that material and do that intellectual work. Google Notebook LM has been helping me organize and query the sources that I have already accumulated. So maybe thinking about inviting students to use, they may already be doing so, but surfacing that, or using this as a point of class discussion. And then again, in my particular program, in my work, I have used ChatGPT as a copy editor. I gave it the role of a faculty member in my program with expertise in qualitative research, which is what I'm doing. And then I also gave it based on the guidance that I received as a student, I gave it a lot of, I see Denise is here. I didn't know that you were here, Denise. Hello, good to see you. Okay, that's why I never look at the chat. That's why I try to keep my eyes on you right here. My program gave very clear guidance, and it said, create a prompt that is something like, you are an expert reviewer, you are a faculty member, do not ghostwrite, do not come up with new meaning. So that's the way that I have been using AI. And then again, I certainly never copy and paste AI generated revised narratives as examples and just stick it right into my dissertation. I would not feel good about that, but that's the kind of guidance that we would invite our students. And I think your policy already does that as well. So just help students to think about what are appropriate ways to use AI, how they can use it to support their learning, maintain their intellectual rigor, and yet learn to use these tools in appropriate ways, because I really think it's a pretty important life and workplace skill moving forward. So that's the end of what I prepared. We've already had some good conversation. Just as we wrap up our time together, what has been resonating with you and what additional questions and conversation are on your mind? I'm going to pull down the slides because they themselves kind of can create a barrier and reduce human connections. So I mentioned Denise, that's a friend and a colleague that I've known for several years, and she just posted in the chat or the Q&A that Google Notebook LM has been useful for her. So thank you for that. I'll just add one more thing while I'm waiting to see if anything else comes in. And that is that in my experience, this moment in time requires a level of intellectual humility as instructors, as professors, that may be a little bit uncomfortable or different for us, right? As the authority on our topics, we are used to having that authority role. And in this situation, we're all learning together and learning with our students. And I have found that just being open with my students when I'm teaching them is to say, we're learning this together. Tell me what you're using. Let's work this through together. So yes, I see another comment from Denise about focusing on enjoyment in online classes and minimizing negative experiences. And another comment here as well. I mean, I really think that's the only thing we can do, given how easy it is for students to potentially use AI to do a lot of their work in online classes. We've got to focus on the human connection and enjoying our time together. And then another comment here, like and use the idea of using video, absolutely. And like the idea of having students reflect on their use of AI. One of my grad students said the AI grant letter lacked heart, right? I really think adding that reflective piece for students to dig in. Did this help you, or did this hinder you? Did this feel satisfying and rewarding, or did this feel synthetic? I've been thinking about an analogy related to sometimes when we use AI. Sometimes to me, it feels like I'm eating a Twinkie. And really what I want in my work, in my intellectual efforts, I want to be eating my Grandma Reba's moist chocolate cake that is a bundt cake. And it is, by the way, Reba is no longer with us, but back in the day, she would make this amazing, rich homemade cake, and each slice of the bundt cake would have exactly one pecan placed just so. That's like a rich and satisfying interaction as opposed to eating a Twinkie. I feel like, again, we and our students, we need to wrestle with it. And there've been plenty of times that I've been like, you know what, this is not worth it. I can do better work, or this is just frustrating to me. As professionals, we can stop and engage in that reflection. It may be helpful to structure that opportunity for our students. They may not be in the habit of doing that. Now, to be fair, I think Gratz students are mature professionals, generally speaking, as well. But given the time that we're navigating, I do encourage thinking about how to structure a reflection. And the last thing I'll say about that is keep in mind that takes extra time for your students and for yourself. It may be the case that you may need to reconsider how you're grading, right? Like maybe the reflection itself is now worth a percentage of the grade on a particular activity. And maybe we have to reconsider what's in our syllabus and what assignments we're asking, because maybe each assignment we're going back and forth with students a little bit more regarding AI use, appropriateness, and all those kinds of things. So I just think this is a time for reconsideration. And, even I'll turn this question that we were talking about earlier, I'll turn this back on ourselves. Like, as educators, as people who are passionate about what you are teaching, what matters to you, right? What do we want for our students? What gives us a degree of fulfillment and well-being as professionals? Why do we teach what we teach? In my experience in higher education, we're not doing it for the money. there's meaning and purpose that we are seeking to advance in our own lives, in our communities, in the lives of our students. So as educators, maybe that's a key takeaway for us today as well, is let's think about what matters to us, how AI can advance that, or where it threatens those deep passions, and kind of maybe use that as a guiding principle as well.
Flower,
So I'll
I'd like
pause
to
there.
ask you. Oh, I'm sorry. I'd like to
Yeah.
ask you about your upcoming book. The title, The Joyful Online Teacher: Finding Our Fizz in Asynchronous Online Classes. Could you talk about that word fizz?
Yeah, it's about effervescence. It's about, I mean, I think at this point you can tell my personality. It's not hard for me to bubble up, right? I'm a former jazz dance teacher. I have a lot of energy, but I have found in online classes that effervescence, that spontaneity, that fun, that buzz of interaction that I love in an in-person classroom setting or a dance studio setting, it's lacking. It falls flat. And so when I wrote about finding our fizz in online classes, it's about, okay, I'm very honest in there. It's not the same. I prefer teaching in person. And quite frankly, I would love it if all of us who were here right now were in the same room. There would be a buzz, right? But we know that technology, and this is a case in point right now, makes it more possible for more people to attend and engage. And so that fizz is about collective effervescence, which is a term coined by Emile Durkheim. This idea of fostering that flourishing and that buzz as well.
Great.
So,
We have
yeah.
one final comment here in the Q&A, and then we're coming up on 8 o'clock. So Flower, I'll let you close us out.
Yes, thank you. So, hello from Chicago. I'm an instruction librarian lurking on this conversation. It's been great. Thank you so much. This is the fizz, right? I want to share that instruction librarians, yes, are grappling with the AI output, evaluation, learning, which I was glad you mentioned as a priority. Shameless plug to reach out to your institution's librarians about collaborating. I've made modules in collaboration with online teaching faculty when asked. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that good reminder. Again, I mentioned AI research tools, and that's a clear indication that librarians are grappling with this as well, right? And bring a lot of expertise to the conversation. So thank you for sharing that comment. And with that, Donna, to your point, I will wrap up myself anyway, and just again express appreciation to the Grossmann family and to everyone who has been able to engage in this conversation, even if we're just listening and thinking. I hope it's been useful for you. I hope it's been clear to you that I find my fizz in being here with you during this time. So thank you again.
Thank you for taking the time, and thank you for everyone who attended. If you couldn't attend live, we will post the recording for you. Thank you again to the Grossmann family. And with that, everyone have a great night.